Good. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this coffee break and that you enjoyed this morning with inspirational talks about what's going on in Stanford and a good methodology that maybe we can apply in many things in innovation, which is the moonshot thinking. Now we will continue with the roundtable, focusing on innovation challenges in European hospitals. And when we think about the challenges that we have, probably you know, and that's something that James also talked this morning, that only 24% of the last decade approved by the FDA medical devices have an indication in pediatrics. And the thing is that more, or the majority of them, are for kids above 12 years old. Also, you would know that more than 50% of drugs are prescribed off-label. That means that in pediatrics, they are not designed, developed, and tested for pediatric use. But if we go to rare diseases, that can grow to up to 90%. So we have a challenging environment in pediatrical innovation, but also we have an ever-changing world with big challenges like environmental change, energy, which will be one of the greatest challenges we will face. And in fact, last week, we got this publication that suggested that pregnant women and kids would be the first affected in their health by the climate change. We've seen war and the impact that it can have in the supply chain. And the big crisis that it seems that will come, the economic crisis that surely will have an impact in the innovation scene, startups and new spin-offs. Probably new pandemics will come, and some that have still to be overcome. And we have a world, geographically and politically, that is changing. We can go to the virtual world that is coming, but at the end, nowadays in history, it's a time that thanks to scientific advances, technology, and research, we've advanced more than ever. So nowadays, we have solutions that can go beyond the brain-blood barrier to deliver therapeutics to the brain. We can have non-invasive diagnostics of meningitis. We can track children that are learning to walk again. And we can genetically modify viruses to cure cancers that were unbelievable to be cured before, like retinotherapy. So for that, what we can do as European references in innovation from children's hospitals and foundations to leave them a better future. And for that, what we've set is a roundtable with key opinion leaders and references from around Europe. We have Anne Keane, Innovation Manager at Children's Health Ireland. We have Paul Dimitri, Professor of Child Health and Director of the National Institute for Health Research, Children and Young People MedTech Cooperative. We have Mesik Malenda, CEO of Kids Foundation from Poland. And we also have Kathleen McGreevy, Chief Operating Officer from Mayer Children's Research Institute in Florence. So having all you here, let me start with a broad question to all of you. What do you mean by innovation, and how do you understand innovation in your institutions? So, who wants to start?
Yeah, either one starting. So, we have a very particular context in Children's Health Ireland. So, we're the 3 Dublin children's hospitals that are coming together to form one organisation in preparation for a move to a new building, brand new state-of-the-art building that we're hoping to get possession of next year. So it's a very exciting time. But because we have that context, we need to really think about innovation in a very broad way. So we're looking, by its very simplest definition, we see innovation as anything new that can be implemented to solve a healthcare problem or a healthcare need. And we're really putting a focus around culture and how we can create an environment that both nurtures innovation from within, but also is receptive to innovation coming externally. So that's a key focus for us. We're looking to see how we can increase capacity, confidence among our staff, and also how we can build partnerships to share knowledge and information, part of what we're doing here today.
Great. Paul, what's your experience?
Yeah, thanks very much. It's an interesting question, and I think Ivan picked this up in his previous talk, and I was interested to hear about Ivan's view of innovation, and I think he encapsulated it very well. So for innovation to exist, we need to understand need. And we work very closely with children and young people, really to understand needs. And we also work with healthcare professionals as well, and we bring those needs together. So unmet needs from the pediatric or child health perspective and from the clinical perspective are often quite different. So what we have to do is decide where those unmet needs are and where we should focus. But I think the key here is developing novel ideas, translating them into something that has impact on the children and young people that we look after. And when we talk about innovation, we always think about technology. And in my presentation, I'm going to show something where there's a mix of reality and technology that actually works very well. But innovation doesn't have to be technology, but actually we support innovation that impacts on the children and young people that we look after, the families that we look after, the clinicians that provide the care, that ultimately creates change for the better. And so when we talk about innovation, some of the innovations that we have developed in my own institution and as a network, and I'll talk about the NIHR, Children and Young People MedTech Cooperative, in a short while. But some of those things that we've developed, actually, you would look at them and say, are they really technology? But they are most definitely innovation. They have most definitely changed the lives of the families and the children and young people that we look after. So ultimately, I think our aim in healthcare is the impact of innovation on the wider healthcare community, those are service providers, healthcare professionals, the families, so the parents, and remembering that children start from very young, where they are totally dependent on their parents, to those that become independent through those transitional phases of development in adolescence. And so we think about how we develop the technologies, the changes that we make through innovation, through these new ideas for those children and young people as they develop through early childhood to adolescence.
Okay, thank you, Paul. What's your experience, Maciek, from in Poland?
Yeah, so Paul, I have to agree with, I think, all of what you said. So from my perspective and from our perspective, innovation it's not a technology, it's basically change that is causing you to change to something new that wasn't existing before. So this is basically innovation for us. And sometimes change of a process, sometimes it's implementation of a technology, sometimes it's just the training that you need to do with the staff of the given hospital to learn that they can do things differently. That was done before because they have some experiences for 20, 30 years. And sometimes this change and the process of change is the hardest thing to do because people doesn't like change. And in our experience, we are the KIDS Foundation. KIDS is the acronym in Polish for Children Hospital Innovation Club. It was founded 3 years ago near one of the biggest Polish hospitals, Children Memorial Health Institute, because we saw that it wasn't changing a lot in a sense of technology mostly, but also the processes and the changes of today's world. But now, after 3 years, we are working with 20 hospitals in Poland, 20 children hospitals and wards, the children wards in Poland, pediatric wards. And we have around 300 people that are working around as a volunteers. So we gathered people, but what it's important, it's what Paul said. There's always a need, and we are always looking for this need to change. And we are looking and going deeper and deeper, and I hopefully will say about it how we are doing it. That this is the core of innovation. So without this need, without the need for change and to bring the better future for us, it's not existing. So this is innovation for me.
Nice. Kathleen?
So I think innovation is a really personal thing, and it really depends on the person that's doing the innovating and also on the organization and the personality of that organization. So I work at a public children's hospital that's part of the regional health system of the Tuscany region. So we tend to reflect on innovation either in terms of absolute innovation, so thinking about trying to invent something that doesn't exist anywhere else, and that sort of appeals to the part of my background as an engineer. Also, another part of it is more of a relative innovation. So what are innovations that maybe we can learn about what other people are doing, what other hospitals are doing, and try to implement a change within our hospital? And that appeals to the part of my career is managing international relations for our hospitals. So I just wanted to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to participate at this event, because it's been just such an amazing opportunity already to learn so much and hear about what everyone's doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. So we see here different institutions from different countries with different sizes, but at the end we understand more or less the same innovation. But my question is then, what would be the main challenges and opportunities that you face at your institutions in pediatric innovation, meaning?
I think you referred to some of them there in your opening presentation, but I think for us in children's, again, it's very, I think, connected to each hospital and each organisation's context, but for us, we definitely have challenges around accessing staff time, staff energy. We're still in a bit of a post-COVID world. Are we post-COVID? We're in this world that we're in right now. But even without that, I think we're in very busy operational environments. So how do we create space for staff to innovate, to feel confident to do that, to feel like they have the time and the space to do that? So that is a huge challenge. And then as a publicly funded organisation, I think it can be sometimes difficult to work in a very agile way. We're in quite traditional structures, and the way we're financed is quite structured and hierarchical. And then we also have a lot of professional hierarchies in healthcare, not just in Ireland, I'm sure. Internationally, how we're trained as healthcare professionals, how we work sometimes as healthcare professionals can be very siloed. And if we're not coming together to work together and collaborate, sometimes we can miss those opportunities for creativity and innovation and sparking new ideas and new thinking. So all of those are definitely significant challenges, I think.
And on that sense, with the changes in the open of the new hospital and project that you have, do you see any opportunity for innovation?
Absolutely. I think with every challenge, there's an opportunity built in there somewhere, isn't there? And I think, for us, it's really looking at, what structures can we put in place to support staff and to create those spaces. But also it's about looking at what we have to hand, which is, the experience and expertise of our staff, working with external partners from industry, universities, academia. And then very importantly, and Paul referred to this, and I think James referred to it earlier as well, how do we tap into the very valid lived experience of our families and children and make sure that's part of the mix as well. So these are all the raw materials, I think, that we can use to create really exciting innovations, whether it be in technology, whether it be in process innovation, or looking at our systems and how they work.
Thank you, Anne. Anyone want to explain the challenges you face?
Yeah, I can add, I think, only to what Anne said, because I fully agree. Like you said that you think it's outside of Ireland also, and I definitely can say in Poland it's exactly the same. What I think also, and this is especially focused for us lately, is we, at least in Poland, we forgot that in this patient-centric care, post-COVID care, we a little bit forgot about the hospital staff and in general staff of medical staff. So what we are thinking about more and more is also the doctor experience, nurses experience, the health professionals experience, because we see that for years we were treating them as kind of a gods, that they were better than us. They were working 24 or 48 hours and they were never saying that something is wrong. But we see more and more this quiet quitting, burnouts, and we are working more and more with other foundations in Poland to work with the staff, and also to help them increase the experience that they have in their place of work, because without them, there is no patient experience. And lately I heard the great quote that people treat people, technology can only help those people treat them. So we need to care of those people, and without doctor's experience, we will not have the patient experience that we want to have. So maybe just to add that.
So can I just add to it, because just to pick up on these comments, I sort of look at things in 3 dimensions, but I look at also in silos. So this question is about the people the process in the institutions. And so the people, when we talk about the people, it's the people we look after and the people that deliver the care. Healthcare professionals are really narrow in their view, and life is going to change as new healthcare professionals come through. Nurses, physiotherapists, doctors, as they come through, they're going to look at the world very differently to the way I do now. And I'm pretty broad-minded, but I'm also an older healthcare professional. And I worked in a very siloed system where you learnt about disease, you learnt how to cure people, and that was your job. And then you learn everything along the way about patient interaction. I didn't learn about coding. I didn't learn about artificial intelligence. I knew nothing about immersive reality until I met colleagues at the university. But it's about getting people to be broader-minded. The problem at the moment is people don't have enough time to be broad-minded. You've got to allow people headspace to be broad-minded, to think differently. But actually, what I've also learned is actually you don't need to necessarily know a lot about the things that you can change, as long as you know who to ask. And this is where the wider community comes in. So I look at the sort of individuals, the children, the young people, the healthcare professionals, the families, and then say, well, how do we make that change? I can't make the change individually because I was never trained to do that. But actually, I know lots of people that do really, really amazing things. You know, they work in the field of data analytics and artificial intelligence. They create immersive reality. They work in the field of engineering. I go to these guys with a problem and say, look, here's the unmet need. And they go, yeah, we can solve that. No, most healthcare professionals can't do that. But if we learn how to interact in a community, then actually what we do is we facilitate change through that chain of people. The other issue, and going on an institutional level, is creating an environment that's able to do that. And hospitals are really challenging to do that in. And if you're a business trying to work in a hospital, it's incredibly difficult. It's a bureaucratic system that doesn't seem to cope with anything but healthcare professionals working in it, because it's the business of looking after patients. That's what we do. So what we have to do is create different or new environments that either happen within the hospital or cross the boundaries of the hospital to make sure that actually what we do is we affect that change by facilitating the ability to communicate and to create new products, new opportunities that will essentially cause impact. And then there's finally the word acceptance that comes into this. So, you know, when you say to a number of healthcare professionals, who would use technology? Some will go, yeah, I'll use it. Others will go, oh, no, I don't like technology. And in fact, they say they don't like technology, and the next thing is they pull out one of these, and they go, oh, I thought you didn't like technology. People are naturally barriered to technology. They say, well, I don't know what it does. I don't know how to do it. Therefore, I'll not use it. And in fact, what we've got to do is create a culture of change by educating and training people, what could be broadly talked about digital literacy, to make sure that we bring the whole healthcare professional and the patients and families up to speed with what we're doing. So when we create things, when we innovate, we create new products, we then need to bring those to use it and make sure that they understand how it's used and how it fits into a clinical pathway.
Yeah, I totally agree and think we have a challenge in closing this gap in between the clinical, the technology, and the technical, and keep working together, because there's also different languages and we have to collaborate more on that. Masik, I wanted to take up from your previous mention on the patient's participation, and I want to ask you if, what initiatives do you take into account to put patients in your processes of innovation? And second, as you mentioned, professionals, are you also taking into account professionals in this process?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So from the very beginning of Kids Foundation, because we were going up from various other industries, from banking, from finance, from insurance, and we all learned that the new fancy world like user experience and etc. So we started to dig down into that, and we understood that in healthcare it can be applied too. So the first thing that we do whenever we are starting any new project, we are talking with all of the stakeholders that are involved in the process. So, for example, when we were doing one of the biggest projects that we are still delivering, but it's one of the ones that we want to brag about, is the VR, the immersive technology that you will be probably talking about too. In oncology wards, when we started that, we found a solution somewhere in the world, but then we started to talk with the nurses, with the patients, with the parents, and we all understood what are the problems. And of course, it was hard because the specialists that were involved were coming back saying, these are the stories that I never had in my life. So normally I was working for a new banking system in my daily work, because what we are doing, we are basically taking the user experience specialists, some analysts, and saying, in your daily work as a professional, you're doing that. So in Kids Foundation, you can do the same. So it's knowledge voluntary work, not the typical voluntary work. So they did it, and they spent like half a year with the families, and they understood what are the problems, where are the problems, and with each project we do that. And of course, the problem there is that they're going back and they need some kind of psychological care that we are also providing for them, because the problems that they are facing, they're way different than in the daily job. But in the end, we can understand the problems. So we are not building the solutions just for the sake of building something new and innovative, and that we think that something is working. So, but we are listening to the patients and the parents, because parent is also a very important stakeholder in the children path. And our goal is always to decrease the stress that is not necessary in the context of going to the hospital. So, for example, other projects that we did, we initially thought that, because it's always starts with some kind of idea, we initially thought that parents are always worried before going to hospital. They don't know what's going to happen. So we thought that it has to be some technological thing, like, like some portal where they can find all of the information, etc. But we started to dig down and talk with the parents, and they said like, yeah, it would be enough if we'll have some kind of like paper on the entry of the hospital. And it's so easy because some of the parents were not technological savvy. So we, instead of doing the portal, we started to do just kind of like envelopes with all of the information at the beginning. And they loved it. And they said like, this is changing my life, because instead of worrying where to go, how to solve things, I'm just getting all of the information at hand. And I can go and be stressed about my children's health, and not about how to go to the given ward or something. So sometimes it's not a technology, sometimes it's just listening to the needs that our patient has or the parents has. And the same with the because you are asking also about the healthcare professionals, we are always also including the healthcare professionals. So for example, with the VR project, we listened to them that they were really stressed about sterilization and how long it will take for them to put on this goggles, etc. So we started to do it with them. We asked them what are the problems, how to solve it, and we are also solving those problems, because we understand that none of the innovation will be implemented if the healthcare worker will be not happy about those solutions, because they will push back and they will say like, in theory, yeah, I'm agreeing, but in practice, it's lying somewhere in the corner, and I'm not using it. So
that's interesting. Thank you. So one experience focuses in putting the professional in the middle, immersing them, and professionals from outside the hospital in the middle of the needs. A little bit like, for me, resonates to the biodesign process that was explained before, James Wall. And the second is focusing on the health literacy that before. We were talking about also with Paul. And what's your experience? You know that you in Ireland, you have great collaboration with companies. How you put in the equation also for those collaborations with companies in innovation, patient professionals and families?
Yeah, I think sometimes we can put a lot of barriers in the way of how we include patients and families, and sometimes we assume that we know what they need. And I think particularly in pediatrics that can be true, because we're quite empathetically driven, and we pride ourselves on that. But often we're not asking the questions in the right way or in the right spaces. So it's about creating those spaces where you're really getting a deep understanding of what the needs are. And I think, you know, when we're talking about adoption and we're talking about scalability and spread, if we really get a good understanding of the needs and develop something that's very empathetically driven, it's going to really increase your chances of it being adopted and potentially scaling up. And I think just to pick up on something that that Paul was saying earlier as well, I've just lost my train of thought, apologies. So, you know, for us, it's about, you know, we're really interested in looking at, when we work with our staff, for us it's really important that we're encouraging them to go back to the needs and stick with the problem. So we have a bit of a tendency, I don't know if it's a healthcare thing, where we tend to rush in, you know, we can fix this, you know, we're going to solve this. But it's really important that we're just taking a step back and taking our time with just staying with the needs, sticking with the needs before we rush into a solution. And sometimes we have a tendency to rush into a solution with technology. Sometimes it can, and that may not be what's needed. Perfect example you just gave there, Magic. You know, we tend to think, okay, there's a need here. How can technology fix it? But technology is an enabler, and it's only an enabler in situations where people will use it and want to use it. So that's really important. And what we're trying to encourage in Children's Health Ireland is, you know, we're using things like design thinking, we're training staff on design thinking, and we're trying to get them to really stay in that empathy pace for longer than they even feel they need to, and really getting deeper around the needs. And that involves talking to families, talking to children and young people, and really sticking with the problem.
Great. So more or less, we have all the vision that we need to go to the unmet need, find really unmet needs, and try to involve all the ecosystem, families, parents, and professionals to be involved so that we can take the most of this process. And going to Kathleen, we've talked before in the presentation about the impact that all this situation in the world is having. What would you think is the impact, and what do you think we could do as innovation hospitals in Europe to help move innovation forward in this changing world?
But I think that all organizations, not just children's hospitals, are going to have to really change the way that they do a lot of things. And we're all going to have to find a way to contribute to overcoming these huge societal challenges. These aren't just even healthcare challenges, they're societal challenges that we're all facing. I think one of the important trends that I hope that we'll be seeing is that children's hospitals will continue to take on more and more of a role of leadership in their local communities and regions, and really put the expertise that they've developed make it available to larger communities. I'm just thinking, in these days we're working on a grant application for digital health for community medicine, which is frankly something that's taking our whole team really kind of far out of its comfort zone, because we're used to thinking about how to innovate within the hospital, and now we're trying to think about how can we innovate within not only our region but also within all of Italy. How can we reach hard to reach and vulnerable groups? How can we reach children that are in rural areas that perhaps are socially, economically disadvantaged, migrant children? Thinking that perhaps one of the best ways that we can help treat those children is to make sure that they never have to come to our hospital. So we're thinking about how we can apply, for example, simulation techniques to try to help develop new products, adapt to existing technologies to try to reach these kids. And I think that that's going to be a really important effort that all of us are going to have to be making in the next years if we want to try to respond to all of these challenges that you mentioned.
Paul, how are you facing this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I go back to that from our previous speaker, the word disruption, because it's important that we champion innovation and technology, but that we disrupt the current healthcare system. And so we talk about hospitals, and actually hospitals are only a small part of an enormous healthcare system. So in the UK, we talk about primary care, which is essentially general practice, community healthcare, health visiting. We then talk about secondary care, which is the kind of district general hospitals that are delivering generalist care, and then specialist care, which is tertiary. And we talk about hospitals that way. We say, well, how do we do things in the hospital? And we say, well, actually, should we be thinking about doing things in the hospital, or should we be thinking about how we move everything out of a hospital and deliver healthcare in a different way? One of my colleagues in Cambridge said to me only a few weeks ago, she said, our aim is to create the smallest hospital in the world. And I thought, well, there's a good start, because actually if you aim to do that, your notion then is that you are creating a system of change, that you're pushing the boundaries of healthcare in the old system where everybody comes to hospital because that's the place where you are cured, you receive a treatment, and actually we have new ways of delivering care that we've never known before. A decade ago, some of this stuff did not exist. So I'll talk a bit about virtual reality in my next presentation. But actually, virtual reality rehabilitation can be delivered at home. That child never needs to come to the hospital to deliver that form of rehabilitation. So we now need to think about using our capabilities of developing technology through innovation, developing change that drives healthcare in a different way. And actually, to take that one step further, I suspect what we'll end up doing is disrupting those models of primary, secondary, and tertiary care. We won't have those barriers there. We will just talk about healthcare as a much more fluid system by which technology is an enabler. And I think that's a really important point there. Technology enables this. We're not getting rid of healthcare professionals, and we're not getting rid of healthcare. What we're doing is we're developing new methods of doing this. And we go back to that principle. Do we need it in the hospital? Can we deliver healthcare in a very different way? That doesn't mean to say hospitals can't exist. Of course, the surgeons would say, well, of course, I need an operating theatre. But actually, the question there is, well, they need an operating theatre, but do you need that many people in the operating theatre? Can it shrink down because there are other people elsewhere that can facilitate that operation that may not be present in that theatre at the time? So I think it's beholden upon all of us to say, to move to that phase of disrupting healthcare for good, making sure that we keep young people, children in the community, deliver healthcare in a different way. And ultimately, the knock-on effect is a total societal change. That actually, if you keep children in the community, they get to go to school more. They get to interact with their families more. They get to make a contribution in other ways as they get older. So it's not just about ultimately disrupting healthcare, it's also creating a system of change that facilitates other parts of life that will impact on a nation as a whole.
Thank you, Paul. I love this idea of disrupting health. And I see you've done your job during the coffee break on thinking how moonshot thinking can be applied to pediatrics. Also, that made me think on something that we were talking yesterday with our friends from Stanford, that we were talking with a surgeon in oncology, and he was talking about neuroblastomas, one of the more complex developmental tumors for kids. And we're thinking of ways to solve part of the problems that they have in surgery. But the great disruption here would be not to get to that point. So not have the tumor at the beginning. So it thinks a little bit challenging, but it's this moonshot thinking thought on how to make things different. So I love that. Maciek, would you want to add something on that?
There is one thing that I'm always saying, that we are always now thinking about sick care, not healthcare. We are saying this is healthcare, but we are basically talking about sick care. And what we are saying is about bringing healthcare. And I fully agree. We should think about outside perspective, not only hospital. And of course, it's hard to do it now, as we have silos and we have the different financing for the public-private institutions, and it's hard to find stakeholders that are interested in general health, because in theory all of us are interested in the general health, but in practice, when it comes down to the business, and you said also about it that all the hospitals are basically businesses, and not only hospitals. There's a different interpretation of what healthcare means, and I think what we need to bring to the table is that we should find the stakeholders that are interested in the general public health, and we see that I see the trend that is changing, that people are bringing more and more those ideas to the table, the ideas of preventive care and not having to go to the hospital at some point. But I think we still have years to come to that, and until that, we should, I think, do innovations on the hospital level, outside of hospital level, and the small communities level or bigger communities.
Could I just pick up on that? Because there's a really important point there. I wrote a paper recently on precision diagnostics, and it got me thinking about how we approach health and disease. And I absolutely agree with that. We don't really talk about healthcare, we talk about sick care because we care for the sick. And it got me thinking about actually what we do very well and we're getting better at is precision diagnostics for illness. What we don't do very well is diagnose wellness or diagnose good health. Yeah. And good health starts in childhood. It doesn't start in your 50s and 60s. There was a real move many years ago to sort of focus on the 50 years plus and saying, this is a focus on prolonging life, health. And actually, I thought, why don't we shift that to children? And we think about what keeps people well enough for long enough. And so we should start to think about moving into that field of diagnosing good health. What are the facets, what are the aspects of healthcare or health that keep people healthy into adulthood and into old age? And so there is a challenge here now to say, well, we need data to start to understand that. And there is a whole process of systems biology now where you start really at the sort of DNA level, and we talk about genomics and the other omics, proteomics, metabolomics, etc. But it gets bigger and bigger until we look at the wider environment. And the new challenge for us is to democratize data that we can get from the general public. How we manage to get that environmental data, and by environmental data I mean near environmental as well, so there is a lot of data that's on mobile phones about how people interact with them, about what they look at, how they manage their health, etc., that we can pull in. But we need access to that data, and people need to trust healthcare professionals, data analysts, etc., to give that data across. But as we build that data environment from the omics to the near and wider environment, we will understand better how to preserve good health. So what we will move into is an era, I suspect maybe a decade or longer away, in diagnosing good health, not just diagnosing disease.
So going beyond the sick and moving to the whole life of a person.
If I can add on that, because I fully agree with you, because I think for now we are keeping, like, I have my personal experience. I'm not a child, obviously, but I have my personal experience because I'm using the glucose monitoring, like the continuous glucose monitoring. I don't have diabetes, but I'm doing it for the sport reasons. And I came to my doctor saying, like, can you analyze my data? And he said, like, no, because I don't know anybody else who is using the constant glucose monitoring when he's healthy and he's not diabetic. And I think we are missing that. We are missing this point of achievement, what means to have a good, healthy life in your 20s, in your 10s, in your early age, even later. And we are all the time thinking about not having disease, but not having disease means like it's a really late stage to address. And I think we should go back in this assessments. Yeah.
I mean, I was really interested in what you said, Magic, about, it's difficult to find the stakeholders, even though we're all stakeholders in this, So there's, like, the question, I suppose, a little bit controversial, is that profitable? Is it profitable for us to be innovating around, so that there's a real question there. And obviously we're healthcare providers and ethically, that's what we want to do. But it's, I think that's a challenge in the wider ecosystem. In terms of how we innovate around that, and finding people that are interested, invested, beyond corporate social responsibility, that it's a really it's a driver for change. So I think that's the real challenge. It's obviously the thing that we need to do. It's clear.
Yeah, I think nowadays I hear more and more on I think a Polish level, but I think also European level, to think about quality healthcare and about paying for quality, paying for keeping people healthy and not treating sickness. But basically, it's the model from China from thousands of years ago that the doctors were paid for keeping people healthy. So maybe we should revise that and look on the history and check how it was done. I agree that I don't know if it's profitable. In theory, it should be, because keeping people healthy, it should be profitable. But
yeah, our driver, but it's just the wider, for the wider ecosystem.
But I think it needs the change in the benefit system and how we are paying now for healthcare.
So for looking for sustainability, it goes to impact. And I will come back to innovation. Are you measuring the impact of your innovation, the innovation being done in your institutions? Do you have something set in place to measure the impact that it's having?
Shall I start with that one? Yeah, I think, so it's a big word, impact. And you can look at qualitative, quantitative impact, and the wider impact on individuals, systems, healthcare professionals, etc. So yes, we do measure impact. The question is what impact people want. So I always think of impact as if I'm going to tell somebody a story about why we need something, it's got to have impact. Now, an impact to a commissioner is different to an impact to a healthcare professional, is different to an impact on a parent. And we've got all those factors to consider. So coming back to your question, do we measure impact? Yes, but we measure impact probably imprecisely, and we tend to be quite linear in the way we do it. So when we publish research, the impact is such that we are publishing data that shows change. However, the National Institute for Health Research asks us for case studies, which actually may not be a lot of data there at all, but there may be some change in the way we deliver care where the uptake of that particular technology has allowed us to deliver care in a different way. So we use case studies to demonstrate impact. Impact on patients' lives is really different, because what I believe is making a change and what impacts on a family can be sometimes very different. So actually, measuring impact is sometimes about asking the patients and the families, how has this changed your life? How has it made a difference? That might not be quantifiable. I might not be able to write a research paper on that. I might not be able to go to commissioners and say, well, I've got all this data that says this. But actually, what might happen is it might revolutionize a patient's lives. And you'll see a video that I'll show in a bit where one technology that we have been looking at has massively changed patients' lives, massively. And I don't want to give the secret away too quickly because it's in the slides. But I think, in answer to your question, yes, we do measure impact, but we also need to understand where we need to measure it and why we need to measure it and who that impact changes. But ultimately, the last bit of it is to say, what's the purpose of the impact? Is the purpose to get that technology into a hospital? Is the impact about supporting a company to get that technology in the market? Is this about getting a research paper? So, people talk about impact factors with research papers, that actually that impact is important for the universities, that those papers are published in high-ranked journals. Do we measure impact through funding? If I'm an academic, I say, well, I've got so much in funding. That's impact, but I haven't actually done it yet. So impact's a big word, and so what I would say is we need to understand why we're measuring impact, who it's for, and what its purpose is.
Good. Quickly, the others, are you measuring somehow impact in your institutions?
Yes, but probably not very well. I think probably when we try, it's easier to quantify anything that involves money. So it's easier to quantify, return on an investment, see what the impact of our patents are, things like that. I think what's more difficult to quantify is what's the return on our mission, and that's something that is more qualitative. But it would be really important to develop or apply ways to measure that more appropriately, and try to find ways also to balance projects in such a way that perhaps some initiatives help to improve our return on investment, and then those funds can be invested in other projects that have more of a return on mission. I think that would be a really good thing if we could figure out a way to do it.
So in our case, I think I agree with you. It's really hard to measure outcomes, especially with the various stakeholders. In our case, we mostly discuss with parents and the professionals how they like the solutions that we provided. And I think the biggest measure for us is are other hospitals willing to implement the same solution as we did? Because we are not working with one hospital, we have this opportunity to work with many hospitals. And this is our aim. This is our goal. So this is again about the values that we provide. So we want to commoditize the innovations that we are doing. So we are doing it for the one hospital and then giving it to the public, saying, if you want to implement it, we can help you with that, but we will help you teach how, we will teach you how to do it, not to do it again with you, because we know how to do it, and we can help you with that. So those projects are the best, and we see that they're implemented in many hospitals now, and we like those kind of measures, because this shows general public that our foundation is working, and it also shows to the Ministry of Health in Poland that some of the projects that we did maybe should be funded publicly, and maybe it should be part of this general thing that is being done with the Polish hospitals, not only the children's hospitals. So this is our goal, and that's why we are measuring that too. But it's more qualitatively, not quantitatively, being measured.
Specific for us, and I think because we're looking at culture. My own background is organisation development, so over many years, been trying to understand how to measure culture and culture change, right? And it's very similar to thinking about something like impact, because it's quite nebulous. There's so many, it's so complex. There's so many different factors involved. So we're looking at it in terms of less the quantifiable stuff, which we sometimes can be a bit obsessed with sometimes, like the figures, and we can certainly measure and collect data on figures, but is that going to tell us anything about impact? So for impact, the real currency potentially, and I think you touched on this, Paul, is stories, really hearing from families and children in terms of how innovation have impacted them and made a difference in their own lives. And I think those stories, I think the benefit of that is it's something that everybody can relate to. It's much nicer than looking at a graph or a set of figures, if you're actually hearing the real lived experience of people. So that's kind of where we're focusing. And in the same way for staff, we're really looking to see hear the experience of staff in terms of how they're experiencing the innovation and the innovation structures as well. But impact is a really hard thing to measure, isn't it? Yeah.
So we are getting to the end of the roundtable, but I would like to finish seeing that there's so many challenges. It seems that we need some kind of public-private collaboration around Europe. So I would like to end with one question: how can we support and foster collaboration across Europe? Maybe Paul, you want to start?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something I aspire to every day that I work in this field, is to foster collaboration. So I'll talk a bit about how we set up collaboration in the UK, but you just want to get bigger and bigger and collaborate. But we've got to understand what collaboration means. And so I think, and there I sort of make the difference between a partnership and a collaboration. So partnership is about, basically joining forces with people. Collaboration is actually the action of doing something. And so we've set up a few collaborations both within the UK and internationally, where we partner first. We say we'd love to work with you. Let's develop a partnership. And then I always say, let's just do one thing. Let's do one thing, because I guess it goes back to Ivan's talk again. If you concentrate on too many things, nothing gets done. But in fact, if you concentrate on one thing, one project, and it works, that is the seed of the collaboration, because you know that you can work together, that there are multiple different people within those teams that can work together. You know that actually through a system, through a methodology, that you can create something or create change, and then that provides the platform for moving on. So I think in terms of moving this forward, I think it's about developing the partnerships. So I've travelled here today. It's fantastic to see so many people here. I'm sure I'm going to chat to so many wonderful people in the next 12 hours or so. But ultimately, what the next step is to say, right, we have talked, we've spoken about possibly working together, developed a partnership. Now what can we do that cements that partnership, that becomes a collaboration? And if we do that, if we keep doing that around Europe with either 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams, however it works, then I think ultimately we'll develop a European network.
Thank you. Kathleen, what's your view on that?
I completely agree with what Paul had to say. Obviously, I think sometimes it sounds like a slogan, but the most important thing is the people, right? And it's really important for us to stay in contact, to build relationships, to build trust among one another. I think that's going to be fundamental for any collaboration moving forward. But I also have to say that, I've been working on European collaborations for the last 16 years, and I'm a little bit embarrassed after having heard the last speaker, because I'm thinking, okay, I've been working all this time, but I have not been applying moonshot thinking. And I do think that we need to maybe change something radically about the way we're thinking about collaborating. And I don't know what that is. I think that's an open question for everyone in this room. And I hope you guys all think about that, because we want to know, because we would definitely want to try to, I think, really change the way that we're interacting with one another. So.
Thank you. We're running out of time, so one last word, Masik or Anne.
For me, the value of collaboration is the knowledge share, and really learning from each other. We're all taking slightly different approaches to innovation, but there's so much commonality as well. And I think even for our own practice, that's really useful to be connecting and hearing that. And I'm sure there's people in the room in the same space. It's just about building that knowledge sharing and relationships. I think is really important as well.
I think what I can add to all of those previous conversations and discussions is I really like the idea of one project, because I think the focus on one thing, even though thinking about moonshot thinking, I think the one project is always creating this kind of let's focus on short-term goal and deliver it, and then from that we know how to collaborate together. We know the pitfalls, we know how to, we know all of the things. So I think this is a great idea, and I think this place is great to start some new collaborations.
Great. So maybe now in the lunch we can talk about this first project all together.
Definitely.
And with that, we finish the round table. So hope you enjoyed, and we will move to the next presentation. Thank you.